What's up, you bunch of G-Virus mutations? I am System Check 66, and if, like me, you've seen many of the previews that have been uploaded to YouTube, then I'm extremely excited for Resident Evil Requiem. But there's also a ton of information to go through and stuff to unpack when it comes to these previews. So let's start with the most glaring thing, something that might debunk the theory that this giant bioweapon that chases Grace in the beginning moments of the game, that might not be Alyssa, because the preview showed off that Leon pretty much dispatches this bioweapon very quickly and very easily. He basically blows her head off, and the way that the camera angle shows the body, it just seems like that's it. It's done for. It's a great introduction to Leon. I'm guessing that is his introduction, and it calls back to Resident Evil 2 when he saves Claire. Get down, and Grace ducks, and then he dispatches this enemy. And I don't know, everything that I saw just led me to think that this isn't actually Alyssa mutated into this bioweapon. Instead, it's just a smaller kind of boss enemy, and there's a couple other smaller boss enemies as well that we get to see later on in the preview. So this could debunk the theory that this is Alyssa. I thought, along with many people, that it's a possibility that it could be Alyssa, but this might have just debunked. Having said that, there's a way that the Alyssa theory could still prove to be true, and that's that this enemy can regenerate, much like Jack Baker or Albert Wesker was able to do, and come back to life. Jack Baker was seemingly unkillable, unstoppable, because he'd just regenerate. And this has been a thing within the Resident Evil series for decades now. It's not outside the realm of possibility that an enemy can regenerate itself and come back. So that's the only way I think that Alyssa could be this enemy, is if they do that, if they bring that into this game's storyline. But for me personally, from my point of view, and the fact that they started to show the other smaller boss type enemies, it feels like this was just a bioweapon. Leon dispatched it in no time at all, whereas Grace had to sort of avoid it, and it was much more challenging for her as opposed to Leon, where he just takes it out. And I think if it is going to be Alyssa, then I don't know, they wouldn't have just taken it out like that. It would have been a lot more epic and grander in scale, and this enemy would have died a lot later on in the game. Bearing in mind, this game's supposed to be around Resident Evil 4's length and maybe a little bit longer. Who knows? But at the same time, the regeneration theory does hold weight as well. It could regenerate. I just don't think that this is Alyssa at this point. We also get to see Leon's introduction into the Rhodes Hill Care Centre, I think it's called. And there's like a little cutscene where we see Leon with this nurse. He's talking to her, and then the zombie with the chainsaw just skewers this woman, like she's done for, and then just zombies start rising up. It's basically that they're like new infected. They've just turned, and it reminded me a little bit of Code Veronica when you're in the training facility and you go to the crew quarters, and you have to pick up those two pistols. I forget the name of them, but then all the zombies start rising up, and you have to sort of get yourself out of the crew quarters. So it reminded me a little bit of that, and also in the Antarctic facility that happens as well. So it was a cool kind of little nod and callback to previous Resident Evils, where zombies just start to rise and you're surrounded by them, and then it plays out like it did in the other sort of trailers that we've seen, where the nurse tells Leon to get out. He needs to get out of the facility, and then she gets skewered by the zombies. So yeah, it's awesome to see it all come together and in context, basically, and all play out as a huge sort of scene and then action segment within the game. It also shows that Leon is infected. That's something that has been proven. He's infected, and he's at the Rhodes Hill Care Centre to try and get some help, to get seen by Gideon, who owns the Rhodes Hill Care Centre, or he knows Gideon's bad and he's there to infiltrate it. I'm not too sure the details at this point in time. I guess we'll know when we get to play the game. But yeah, he's there for a reason. Obviously, he's on the computer in some of the trailers, looking at information and stuff, so to do with the virus. So yeah, I don't know. Or maybe Gideon's been treating him, or the Rhodes Hill Centre has been treating him. I don't know. We're going to find out when the game drops. But yeah, all I do know, and the rest of us know, is that things go to shit pretty quickly, and we get a great reveal of the new zombie types. And someone said, I can't remember who it was, I think it was someone at GameSpot, said this might be my favourite zombie reveal so far within the series. I don't know if it's my favourite. I still think the original sort of zombie from Resident Evil and Resident Evil Remake is iconic, and I don't think it can be beaten. But I think it's very good, definitely. It's up there with like Dr. Salvador's reveal and, you know, the Nemesis's reveal. So yeah, it's very good. Earlier I did say that Leon killing that bioweapon is the introduction to him, but I don't think... I meant to say it's Grace's introduction to Leon. My bad. So yeah, I think we get to see Leon for quite a while before that happens, before he's introduced to Grace. And his back and forth with her at the time, you know, is basically like, why does this dude want you? Why does Gideon want you? Why do they want you? There's something about you. You must be special in some sort of way. And she's like, I have no idea. I don't know. And then he gives her the Requiem. So yeah, that would explain why he's able to take some of the enemies out in gameplay with the Requiem, and then she gets the Requiem. So you only get to handle it with Leon for a little bit, and then it becomes like Grace's gun. I think that's just stuff like that is great. It shows Nakanishi knows what he's doing, and I just love that interplay between the two characters, and you know, the interactions between them, especially Leon basically giving her this OP gun, you know. And I think the Requiem's very similar to like the Albert, whatever it was called, 07 or whatever, the handgun that Chris chucks you in Resident Evil 7. So, you know, Nakanishi does like his sort of like Resident Evil branded weapons, do you know what I mean, that are bioweapon stoppers. So, yeah, it's awesome. But Grace knows that he's part of DSO, so that's interesting. I like that. So, yeah, at this point, Leon's kind of like that action hero that a lot of people have heard of him, you know, and heard of the DSO as an organisation. We've also got ink ribbons returning and item boxes, which is cool. And also Leon is able to pick up a pump action shotgun like the one from Separate Ways that Ada used, so I like that. We're bringing back that style of pump action shotgun. I think overall, the thing that I was most impressed with is them creating these new style of zombies, and the fact that they're still keeping the zombies fresh and interesting. But here's something that's gonna blow your minds, and obviously it's been hinted at, it's been theorized that a Crimson Head style enemy will make its way into Requiem. Now these things are called blister heads, so I'm guessing they'll chase you, grab you, and their head explodes. Like, they're those type of enemies. But yeah, same thing with Crimson Heads. If a zombie's downed and I guess hasn't been decapitated, it can reanimate into this blister head. So again, the theory of reanimation within this game is shown with the blister head, so it's not outside the realm of possibility that the Hag bioweapon, whatever that mini boss, that thing, that stalker enemy, could be Alyssa and just regenerates, you know, or maybe becomes an even worse like blister head. So yeah, they're the new Crimson Head style enemies, and they're called blister heads. So I'm very, very excited. But there was no gameplay shown of those, so that's going to be a surprise. And I'm glad it's being kept a surprise. We also have a zombie type, much like the Zealots in the Resident Evil 4 remake, that I'm thinking can aggro other enemies around it, and also stun Leon. She seems to be able to stun Leon when she screams. She lets out this really high-pitched sort of like scream, and it stuns Leon for a bit, much like the Zealots did in the Resident Evil 4 remake. So that's cool. That's a little bit of a callback to Resident Evil 4, and also bringing over that type of enemy, you know, that can aggro other enemies as well as stun your character. And they're bringing that over from Resident Evil 4. So I quite like that. It's cool. It's evolving the zombie as well as evolving the gameplay as well, much like they did in the remake of Resident Evil 4 and other Resident Evil titles. So I just like the fact that this is evolving, basically. It's an evolved Resident Evil game, and I felt like I haven't seen that since the original Resident Evil 4, personally. While Resident Evil 7 was in VR, and it did kind of have that aspect to it, which was unique, the actual game itself, while it is good and enjoyable, it didn't really revolutionise the series in any way, other than changing it into first person. Is the Screamer zombie stunning your character trope played out at this point? Yeah, you know, Left 4 Dead and just other games that do that, zombie games specifically, you know, they've done it many times before. But I think it's put in place to add a little bit of zest to the gameplay. You know, spice it up a little bit, spruce it up a little bit. So yeah, I'm all for it. It's cool. I like the fact that all these different zombies have different personalities and they're all like individual. I think that's awesome. That's something that we haven't really seen in Resident Evil up to this point. And I just like the way that Nakanishi and his team are playing around with that, with the zombie trope. Basically, you know, the formulaic zombie is no more within Resident Evil. Now we have these new types. And I'm not saying the Crimson Head were formulaic, but we've only ever seen that in the remake of Resident Evil. And the C-Virus zombies, personally, I don't remember them being special in any way, if I'm being honest. So yeah, we've only ever seen a change to the formulaic zombie in Resident Evil when they turn into Crimson Heads. So again, we're getting sort of like these really smart zombies. They can wield weapons, they sort of do things that they did when they were human, and on top of that we're getting the blister heads. So yeah, it's awesome. Like this game is going to kick ass. I think Nakanishi has got it spot on in terms of like bringing back zombies into the series. And then we've got all the other enemies, and one of them is known as, which I absolutely love, by the way, I love this name, he's known as Chunk, and that's that big fat boss that chases you throughout the halls of the care centre. He seems to be another Stalker enemy as well, and he chases you through the halls. You have to find different routes as Grace and Leon as well, because he's seemingly unstoppable. And sometimes he'll get stuck in doorways, which I thought was impressive. Like, it's a really cool idea. It's very unique. It shows how clever Nakanishi and his team have been with this game. And these set pieces, the way they play out, are incredible. Personally, like, I think they look incredible. The enemy design, like in terms of Chunk's design, he's alright, bit generic, you know. I will say that I don't think Nakanishi's the most creative in terms of enemy designs. I don't think he's the worst, I don't think he's the best. He seems to get it right with some designs, other ones he doesn't. I thought the ooze in Revelations 1 were good. You know, there was a lot of enemies in Revelations that I thought were really cool. And then the molded were fine in 7, but there just wasn't enough of them, and there wasn't a huge variety of enemy types. So I think Chunk's a cool design, with his just goo eyes going everywhere. Do you know what I mean? His cross eyes, or I say cross eyes, but they're just all over the place. When Leon stabs him in the head with his hatchet, like his eyes just twitching and shit. It reminded me of Birkin in the Resident Evil 2 remake, and how the eye twitches and stuff. So, you know, he's the actual concept of the enemy, like how threatening and scary it is a lot better than the design. I will say that, but I don't dislike the design. I just don't think it's that interesting, and I said that in a previous video. You know, it's not blowing me away. At the same time, I don't mind it. I still think it does what it does, and it's still cool. Like it's still cool looking. It's just, you know, I'm used to the old school Resident Evil enemy designs, and these are like more the new school ones. But I will say that there's a part in the preview where Leon's in this attic, picks up the pump action for the first time, and Chonk's just eating like a zombie, or just a person. He's just eating someone, and it turns around and notices Leon, and it just chases him through this attic. And what plays out is just, I think, maybe going to be one of the best boss fights that we've had in a Resident Evil game up to date. I also need to mention how good the blood effects are and how good the gore is in this game. And Chonk's just covered in blood. Like when Leon shoots him, he's just got blood on his arm, or from where he's been eating his victim, there's blood all around his mouth. And at one point he picks up Leon, he bites on his arm, Leon pulls his arm away, and you know, you just see the blood splat sort of around the existing blood that's around his mouth. So it's just awesome. Like it just looked like a really cool boss fight. I'm very excited to play that part, but very excited to play the whole game, to be honest with you. But yeah, that part, I can't wait to play that. And then we get to see another Stalker boss enemy, and that's the zombie, the big like hench zombie with the hatchet, and it seems like he chases Grace around. She goes into his kitchen, he notices her because he's preoccupied at first doing the duties he would have done as a human, and he notices Grace and just aggroes and goes after her. So he was another Stalker enemy, I think on a smaller scale. So we're going to have multiple Stalker enemies, but for shorter segments during game time. So yeah, you have the Hag type Stalker enemy, you've got Chunk, and then you've got this guy as well, this hatchet zombie. I just love the way that Capcom is switching it up with this game, and you can have like any sort of type of a zombie, and it could mutate into something, or it could already start off as this this huge, like, buffed out zombie that can wield a hatchet, or you'll have another one that probably, like, its head pops off and there's tentacles that whip out from it, much like the Plagas. Who knows? But it's great. It's keeping people on their toes. It's going to keep players on their toes, and anything can happen. I think this virus is a little bit out of control in terms of infecting people. I think they can just be infected and then become whatever, like, but at the same time it's so powerful that it retains their consciousness, or a little bit of their consciousness from when they were human. So yeah, it's a really cool, like, MacGuffin, I'll say that, to have in the game. This new virus is very interesting, it's very intriguing. It reminds me of how I felt when I first played Resident Evil 4, where I just didn't know where they were taking the series and what direction, and the enemies were just completely alien to me. I was used to zombies and hunters and lickers, tyrants, but in Resident Evil 4 there was all these new sort of, like, just enemy types and these weird things. So it reminds me of that, and also the original Resident Evil, where I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that the game had zombies in it, but then when they introduced the hunters or the chimera, the tyrant, Plant 42, it blew me away. Like, I was so blown away by it, because I thought it was just a game where you killed zombies and it was in a mansion, and that was that. But as you played through the game, you got to learn about Umbrella and what they were doing and all these bioweapons they were creating. Yeah, it blew me away. And it was the same thing with Resident Evil 4, where I'd already seen, like, loads of different monster designs within the Resident Evil series, but that kind of brought something new to the table. It brought all these weirder enemy types to the series, and I feel like that with Requiem. I don't think it's gonna blow me away as much as, like, Resident Evil and, like, say, the Crimson Heads from the remake, or the Resident Evil enemy roster, but it's also trying something new, like those games did, and trying to be different, and I commend it for that. And I do think it's going to have some surprises along the way, definitely. And seeing as these zombies are just, like, so different to the ones we faced off before, they even, like, smile a little bit as well, which is super creepy. It shows that they're like fucking insane looking. They smile and stuff. Like, when there's a close up on one's biting Grace, you can see this huge grin on his face. And also, I must say that when she stabs him in the eye, that's some gruesome shit. Yeah, way more than previous games. So yeah, he's also got an arm missing as well. So yeah, it's going all out, like 100%. It doesn't give a fuck. This game doesn't give a fuck. It's going to be rated 18 for a reason. And yeah, when you see Leon chainsawing zombies in half, that pretty much cements that 18 rating, basically. So what else was there? There was some puzzles. Definitely, we get to see a puzzle. I think in some of the previews we got to see some, like, 2 puzzles at least. And yeah, I'm glad that puzzles are making a return. Obviously, memos, letters and stuff, newspaper articles will make a return as well, so we can have a bit of reading and downtime in between the action. Obviously, Leon's segments are way more action packed, a lot more like Resident Evil 4 remake. And then Grace's segments are basically Resident Evil 7 mixed with Resident Evil 2 remake. A lot slower pace, she has to sneak about, but she does get guns, definitely later on, during the care centre parts of the game. Now, along with the Alyssa theory being up in the air at this point, I'm not going to confirm, that isn't Alyssa, because it could be, but it's up in the air, and I don't think it is Alyssa. But yeah, the theory's just up in the air, right? Then we have a concrete theory that's been revealed from Capcom, Nakanishi, and the producer of this game, that Victor Gideon is indeed the guy in the hood in some of those trailers, in the original trailers for Requiem. So that is actually Victor Gideon under that hood. So I previously said in an older video when I was reading up some leaks, because they kind of matched up with the trailer that had come out that revealed Leon. I said that apparently that guy in the hood might be Palak, but I don't think that to be the case now. I think, yeah, 100% that's Victor Gideon. So it's actually Gideon in the hood that kills Alyssa, and then we get to see him later on, when he gets up from that chair and he starts speaking to Grace. But the preview also shows off that he traps Leon and Grace in the care facility. So he's a little bit like Lucas Baker and Alfred Ashford from Code Veronica. he's like playing with them, like they're basically rats in a maze, and you can see him like, close the gates and stuff to trap them both and cut them off from each other. So he's playing a game with Leon and Grace, and it just reminded me of Alfred Ashford as well as Lucas Baker as well. So he seems like a cool enemy, basically a cool antagonist. He's got like a split that goes down his chin, which I'm thinking like when he eventually mutates and stuff, that will open up and some shit's gonna pop out of there. But yeah, cool antagonist, so far, but still very mysterious. And also something that's being confirmed by the director and the producer is that Resident Evil Requiem will not be open world, which I am relieved about. I'm so happy about. There is a forthcoming Resident Evil game that will have sort of semi-open world elements. We'll talk about that right at the end of the video, but I'm just glad that this isn't going to be open world. I'm glad that it's going to be a little bit more linear and just sort of like semi-open, kind of like the older Resident Evil games and the remakes as well. Yeah, because I don't want to be playing a Resident Evil game for like 50 hours all told, like a Metal Gear Phantom Pain. I think the longest games in the Resident Evil series are Code Veronica, Resident Evil 0, and also Resident Evil 4, and that's perfect game length for a Resident Evil title. And then the other ones, they can be finished, within the space of 4 hours, so it just depends, it differs. But yeah, I don't want to be playing a Resident Evil for over 20 hours, basically. I don't think it would do any good, to the series if we had another Resident Evil 6 situation. I know it'd be a bit different because that'd be just game time all in all instead of different characters and separate characters, but yeah, no. So I'm glad it's not open world. And also, in terms of switching between Leon and Grace, from what I understand from the previews, they said it was actually well handled, and as we've seen from previous trailers, it does seem like, Leon will take over and go through levels that Grace has gone through, but obviously with a more action-orientated slant, to gameplay, whereas Grace will have had to sneak past and it's going to be more of a challenge. Leon can just blaze through, basically, and that shows in the moment that those two meet, where she's had to like avoid this Hag, bioweapon enemy, and Leon just takes it out like 2 seconds, basically. The fear is always that Capcom products suffer from the DMC4 curse. The Devil May Cry 4 curse is basically they ran out of time and money and funding, and so they kind of copy and pasted Dante into the game, and it was very repetitive, very samey, and to be honest, quite boring. And I didn't want to feel that as playing as Dante. So there's always that fear that they're going to do that with other games, and that Resident Evil Requiem maybe will suffer from the same curse. But from what I understand from previews and everything else, it seems like it's fine. Like, it's not a copy and paste job. And when Leon's going through segments of the game that Grace has gone through, there's going to be enough differences to keep people's attention and make it not feel like, you're doing the same thing just in a Leon skin. So I'm quite excited to play the game and see if that's true, and see kind of how things change when you play as Leon compared to Grace, and how Grace handles situations compared to Leon. Yeah. Also, I mean, we get to see Leon opening like cupboards and stuff, right, with his hatchet, which Grace can't open. So they're closed during her segments of the game, but then when you bowl through as Leon, he's able to open them. So yeah, I like that. Like, if they keep that going and play around with that during the full runtime of the game, then it's going to be fine, definitely. I'm confident it's not a way to just pad the game out, is what I'm trying to say. Now, in terms of Elpis, Raccoon City, how the story's going to progress, the other locations we get to visit, I think Raccoon City comes after the care center. I think Grace goes to investigate the hotel where her mother was murdered. Then Leon sort of follows in her footsteps. I don't know whether that plays out as a cutscene or you actually get gameplay of Leon investigating the hotel. Who knows? There was a lot of cut stuff from Requiem, apparently. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Then we go to the care facility. We deal with Gideon's bioweapons, and his traps. And then I think it goes to Raccoon City, and that's when the game is going to really, really open up, and that's the stuff that hasn't been spoiled. So I'm very, very excited. I'm very excited for this game, and I think that they're going to throw a lot of surprises at us when we revisit Raccoon City. So yeah, I think that's going to be a large portion of the game, 100%. And these are just like the little tasters, before Raccoon City. There's also been a lot of speculation as to what Elpis is. A lot of people do think that it's a type of bioweapon that's been hidden underground under Raccoon City, specifically the actual blast zone where the thermobaric bomb hit. It could be, definitely, it could be. At this point, these are theories, and a lot of the leaks and stuff, I really wouldn't take them to heart. Honestly, I'd take them with a huge handful of salt. Like in one previous video I made, I was saying that Gideon has 2 henchmen, and one is named Palak, but I haven't seen or heard anything of Palak, and I thought the guy in the hood, because he looked slightly different, because you couldn't see, his face, and his chin looked slightly different from Gideon. I thought, oh, that's his henchman, right? Who's just used the same virus and, kind of looks like Gideon with the grey skin and stuff like that, and has those weird eyes, which apparently, like, Leon has as well. So he's obviously infected with a similar virus to Gideon. So I thought the guy in the hood was Palak, right? And he'd sent his henchman to kill Alyssa. But it's been confirmed that is actually Gideon. So it's Gideon at a earlier stage of infection, where he hasn't got the scar on his chin, and he's just not as fucked up. And also, not Palak, my bad, Gideon gets burnt, like Grace burns him. She throws an oil lamp on him or something like that, and burns him. So there's a lot of damage as well afterwards. So then you cut years later, Grace is a lot older, she's grown up, she bumps into Gideon again. He's obviously going to look different from years prior. Having said that, you'd have to watch my last video, or the video that I talk about those leaks adding up to what the trailer was showing us. And there is some things in the leaks that were obviously made way before the Leon trailer was shown that did add up. Like, for instance, Victor wasn't called Gideon, it was like a Russian name, but his name was still Gideon. You see what I'm saying? It's either that his surname was changed or the first name's changed, either one. I'm pretty sure the Victor stayed as Victor. But yeah, there's things that do add up and do cross over with the trailer, the Leon reveal trailer, and then trailers after that. But at the same time, there's stuff that doesn't seem to add up and isn't true. So, like I said, this is what happens when people just rely on leaks for information. And I'm sorry, but the fact that whoever it was, Game Informer, whatever flipping publication it was, that said that Dust Golem was the what do they call him? The inside industry leaker. Come on now, really? Like, some of the stuff in this, like, isn't it one of his leaks that said that as well as the leaks that I covered as well, didn't they say that Alyssa was this Hag bioweapon, Stalker enemy, when in actual fact, from what we've seen just now, it gets its head blown off, clean off, and it seems to be dead. If that comes true, and then it doesn't regenerate, then all that stuff was bullshit. Like, those leaks were complete shit, and I could have sworn that he was running with that leak in particular for a long time. So the point I'm trying to make as a fan of Resident Evil is I get fed up of seeing this stuff as well. It's not me as a YouTuber as I'm making content for Resident Evil. It's me looking at it as a fan going, oh, for God's sake, I'm so fed up of this. Like, I want some mystery, like I had when I played the original Resident Evil, and Resident Evil 4. I want that mystery to still be retained. And unfortunately, people just getting that information and relying on these leak channels, and it's ridiculous. Like, just wait till we've got some concrete proof. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that Leon's blown this Stalker enemy's head clean off, the way that it zooms in and shows the body, the lifeless body, just the way the whole scene is handled, I don't know. It just speaks to me that it is an Alyssa. That's how it came across to me. Unless you find like notes and stuff that allude to it being Alyssa, which I haven't seen during the previews, then yeah, I would say it's just a typical bioweapon, not typical bioweapon, but a new bioweapon that's, species of bioweapon that's just been retired, basically, by Leon S. Kennedy. So, yeah, that's what I think. Elpis, going back to Elpis, yeah, I don't know. It could be, apparently, Gideon, I missed this, but Gideon says something like, oh, if we let it free. It's something along them lines. It's not word for word, but he essentially makes it out like it's an actual being as opposed to a virus, So, yeah, it could literally be like a super tyrant, or who knows. There's theories saying it could be Spencer, and Gideon is trying to resurrect him, or it could be Wesker. I doubt it. I'm pretty sure they said Wesker's dead in the timeline. You know, the only way he'll come back is in remakes. Which brings me on to my last and final topic that I want to talk about, and that is that apparently, I've just said we shouldn't rely on leaks, but I'm pretty sure this is genuine, and it's from a leaker called Nate the Hate, and he's quite credible. So who knows at this point, he could be wrong. I have read that he's been wrong a few times, but I think we can all admit that it's obvious this game is in development, you know, still, and apparently it was started in 2022, and it is the Resident Evil Code Veronica Remake. So I'm more inclined to believe that this has been leaked, definitely, 100%. I think, yeah, it's Capcom have been asked numerous times to remake that game, and it seems to me like it's probably true that it's coming. You know, it was in development from 2022. Apparently they were way ahead of schedule, which is great. So they're just polishing it up at this point, and it should be hitting us in 2027, I've heard. So not long to wait. And it goes in line with how Capcom are bringing out a Resident Evil title every kind of year. And I think that Code Veronica is the next Resident Evil game to come out, definitely. And I think they're making it alongside, if true, the Resident Evil 0 remake, because if they're ahead of schedule in 2022, it means they have time to pour into the RE0 remake. And I'm guessing that maybe those two games, much like Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5, are going to be very, very similar. And also the older Resident Evil trilogy on PS1 are going to be very similar to each other, you know, where they're going to take a lot of assets from Code Veronica, the remake of Code Veronica, and just transfer them into 0, but make it different enough that it stands out from Code Veronica and the other remakes. But yeah, 100%, I am inclined to believe that Code Veronica is gonna be hitting us in 2027, and I think it's ready to go. I think if they've been working on it since 2022, then we're laughing, and it means they're very confident in that game as well, in that remake. One leak did suggest that Claire would be able to ride on her motorbike, I believe, around Rockfort Island. How that would play out, I don't know. It's quite confusing because Rockfort Island was very labyrinthian and had a lot of stairs. You know, it wasn't a huge open space. It very boxed, like a very boxed in sort of location. So they would have had to change it massively and make it a wider sort of space, you know, and a bigger area. I don't know about that. That leak I'm not too sure about, you know. I mean, for one, like, I guess you could have like a motorbike on the island, like an old Triumph or something that she gets to ride around on. But at the same time, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like Resident Evil to me. But who knows? Maybe in Requiem you can drive the Porsche. I don't know. Or maybe it's more like Resident Evil 6 and RE3 Remake, where it's context sensitive and it's more like an interactive cutscene that you get to play with. I don't know, but I don't believe that part of the leak. But I do think, yeah, Code Veronica is coming in 2027, 100%. And also in the leak, it did say that Wesker would play a much larger role, and so would his Hive team as well. So that's going to be something that I'm excited for, because I wanted more from the Hive team, you know, that he controls and when they attack the island and stuff. So yeah, and obviously he has to have his own hunters as well, just like the original, you know, and the scanner bot things that he had. So yeah, I'm excited. I think that definitely, like, that's just obvious stuff, basically. It's obvious that Code Veronica is coming. I think it's definitely 2027 because they bring out a Resident Evil game annually now. And I think they're way ahead in terms of the games that they're making in the series. So we're going to get Code Veronica next year, 100%. We're going to get some information towards the middle or the end of this year. Maybe even a trailer, hopefully. And yeah, and then apparently Zero is supposed to come out the year after. Not too sure about that one. Obviously Resident Evil 10, we don't know yet. We don't know if this is the last game canonically. I mean, I don't think they'd make this the last game canonically, but it's definitely the end, apparently, of Leon's story, and the Umbrella storyline as well, the continuing kind of Umbrella saga. So yeah, 10, I just don't know about. Nothing. Like, and no one does. But I'm 100% certain that Code Veronica is the next game. Definitely, 100%. So yeah, you can find these leaks like on any site now, because they've they've put them up and just try and find some YouTube videos on it. There's stuff that I don't think, is true, but I definitely think it's in development. I definitely think it's coming next year, and I also do think that it was started in 2022 as well. So that's one to look forward to, definitely, in 2027, and any info and stuff will be dropping, I reckon, end of the year or middle of the year. So we're going to wrap it up, but in summary, I don't think the fears and doubts that people have in terms of Requiem, straddling the line between stealth, survival horror gameplay, with more item resourcing and management, and lack of ammo, and then sort of having Leon come in and destroy that with his more action orientated gameplay. I don't think you have to worry. I really don't think we have to worry. I think that Nakanishi gets it. He's a great director. I like both Resident Evil games that he's directed, and they've been both very different from each other, and Requiem looks like a different game to those, to Requiem and to 7, but still incorporating the stuff that makes Resident Evil great, but at the same time being very different as well. And I just have faith in Nakanishi and the team that he's got making RE9. So yeah, I don't think you have to worry, because to me everything looked fine, everything looked awesome. Like, if you like RE4 and then you like the RE2 remake or the older Resident Evil games, I got loads of kind of nostalgia from the trailers and from the previews that I've seen for this game. There's stuff that take me back to like Resident Evil Remake, and then there's things that remind me of RE2 Remake and Resident Evil 4, original and remake, and there's some Resident Evil 7 in there, and it looks like it's borrowing a lot from the whole series in general. Yes, even from Resident Evil 6, but showing you this is how it could have been, this is how it should have been done. So I don't think that having the dual protagonists and flicking between the two different styles, horror styles, action horror or survival horror, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think they're going to handle it quite well. They're basically making you go through hell as Grace, and sneak around and, conserve ammo and the rest of it. And then as Leon, you can go in and release some of that tension and anxiety that you've built up, and just release it on these zombies as Leon Kennedy, flicking out mags, slapping in a fresh one, and headshotting zombies and then roundhouse kicking them. This is nothing we haven't seen in Resident Evil 4. So if you're a fan of Resident Evil 4, you're going to like this. You're going to enjoy it. And I think most people are fans of Resident Evil 4. It's just that a lot of us old school Resident Evil fans prefer the more survival horror leanings within the series. But this is also building a new character in Grace, and she has those survival horror parts in the game. Those segments are purely survival horror. So Leon's just there as an extra added bonus, to fuck shit up. And I love that. So yeah, his character, people have said his character seems like he's the Resident Evil 6 Leon. It's a continuation. Well, yeah, because Resident Evil 6 is still canon, and Leon has still progressed as a character. So it doesn't surprise me that he's able to hip shoot a zombie or use a chainsaw to chop him up. It's just the natural evolution of Leon Kennedy as a character. So I didn't dislike him and the stuff he could do in Resident Evil 6. I just disliked everything around it, The fact he could hip shoot a zombie and then kick it in the face didn't bother me. It was everything else about that game that bothered me, and also that I was quite burnt out with the action style Resident Evil games at that point. Hence the reason why, if there wasn't a problem and everybody loved 6, 7 wouldn't have brought it back to its roots, and tried something different. The one thing I do love with Nakanishi is he's a huge Evil Dead fan, and that shows in Resident Evil 7 and also in Requiem, especially the chainsaw kills and stuff like that, and Leon picking up a chainsaw. Same with Silent Hill 2. The creators of that game were huge Evil Dead fans because they have the chainsaw in that, and you get to unlock it as a bonus weapon for James. So I love all that stuff, and RE7 borrowed heavily from Evil Dead, especially from the Evil Dead reboot, Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead reboot. So yeah, this one is like throwing in a little bit of Evil Dead in there as well, and especially with the smiling zombies reminding me of like Deadites and stuff. So I love that. I love it. I love that Nakanishi is an Evil Dead fan. I'm a huge Evil Dead fan. There's tons of Evil Dead fans. And if he's incorporating that into this game with a little bit of like Evil Dead splat stick comedy, but not too much. Like, I love that the quips are back, by the way. There's a few quips as well during this preview that are awesome that Leon throws out there. Whereas Grace is a little bit more timid and afraid, and, So yeah, but even she gets a couple quips. Like when she injects a zombie in the back of the head and blows it up with that syringe, she's like, yeah, I think it's a little too strong. She's like, oh, it's a little bit too powerful. And I love that. So yeah, it's got a little bit of a comedic slant, but it's really well handled from what I could see. And you've got like one of the zombies, a screamer zombie, she's like singing and stuff. And you know, that zombie that turns the light on and off. So there's a little bit of like Dawn of the Dead mixed in there as well, and the comedic moments of Dawn of the Dead, the original. So it's in great hands. I have no worries. This is a natural progression of Leon as a character. He's had too many CG films he's been in and games that he's been in where he's eventually become a badass. And for this game to not have him as a badass, because originally apparently they said they were going to depower him a little bit and have him a bit more unsure of what he was doing and just underpowered basically and a bit more scared. And that wouldn't have worked. Like, nah. You know, you have to be realistic within the series canon, and Leon ain't that type of person anymore. Like when he was a rookie cop, maybe, but that's for one day, and then he just sort of turned into a badass, you know, within the CG films as well as Resident Evil 4, you know, and then from there on he just evolved. And in Resident Evil 6 we got the Leon that we got, and then in this one it's a continuation of the Leon for Resident Evil 6, as well as Vendetta and also Death Island. So there you go. That's the Leon we're getting, and that's the gameplay we're getting. And you're either gonna like it and enjoy it, or you're gonna hate it and just want a, you know, back to your roots survival horror Resident Evil game. But just remember, Resident Evil's always had action within the series and within the games. And yeah, some have been more over the top than others, but it still always had an action slant. Definitely, this isn't Silent Hill. This isn't, you know, Project Zero or Fatal Frame if you're from the US. Yeah, Resident Evil's always had that action slant. So, but nothing in the game, as long as it's fun, nothing in the game pissed me off, or at least the preview pissed me off. I thought, yeah, this looks fun. It's going to be super fun playing as Leon, and it's ultra gory, and he's vicious, he's brutal. That's one thing it had over Resident Evil 6. I never felt like the kills and stuff were brutal, vicious, but in this, yeah, he's almost like a full-on psycho, and I love that, you know. I think at this point, yeah, he's a fucked up character, definitely. So, I mean, you know, we could argue about Resident Evil being more survival horror, more action horror all day, but, you know, Resident Evil 2, which is my favourite, the OG, you pick up like an Uzi, and you can just mow down zombies with it. So, like I said, there's always been an action slant to these games, and I think that having Nakanishi and the team that he has and the producer he has on board, I think they understand that. They know not to go too OTT. Even when he takes out the chunk boss, yeah, he just jumps on it from like a high vantage point, lands on it, he's sort of straddling it, and then sticks the axe into the top of his head and sort of just jams it in his brain and then rips the axe out. And that's what kills it, that's what finishes it off. That's not too over the top, you know what I mean? Even in the RE4 remake, they kept it very, very subdued and watered down, you know. Yeah, he does a backflip with before the Bella sisters smash through that wall. And he still jumps on the back of El Gigante to slash at the parasite, you know, poking out from its back. And he still takes out Sadler in a very epic way. But I think at this point, you have to take into account that Leon, like I said, Leon's evolved into this sort of character, so it would just be weird to not have him continue as this sort of character. At this point, Leon is pretty much a B.O.W. killing machine, you know, and he's more than capable, very athletic, you know, almost superhuman in some ways. And RE4, that sort of that brought that character into the series. So yeah, it would just be weird not to have him sort of acting like that and be as competent as he's been in, you know, previous Resident Evil media and games. So I'm not too bothered. I'm not too bothered with it. I think it's quite grounded, definitely, and it's vicious. Some of the kills are vicious. But will they be able to pull it off for the entirety of the game? This going back and forth between survival horror and action horror. We're just gonna have to wait and see, aren't we? When we get to play it, if they pull it off or not. That's the only time we're gonna know if they have or not, is when we get to play it. So I don't know whether any more information or sort of previews and stuff will be coming out for the game until its release. We've only got a couple weeks till it releases. It's going to definitely be a day one for a lot of us, especially for me. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. I'd rather they just keep some stuff secret, definitely, you know, especially sort of the later later half of the game, or say the midpoint of the game, after they get away from the care facility and make their way to Raccoon City. I think that stuff should just be kept, secret still and mysterious, and then we'll see when we get to play the game. So anyway, there's loads of information at the moment regarding Resident Evil Requiem. There's loads of videos and stuff that have come out, and so I might have missed some things. I might have covered everything. If you go back and watch my previous videos, I'll have covered previous things as well as what we've covered today. But hopefully I'm up to date and I've covered enough, or covered everything. So just let me know in the comment section below if there's any things you found out or that you know about, and anything that I missed as well. And until next time, I've been System Check 66. Hasta luego, señores and señoritas. I'm out of here. Peace.